All right, well, it's 5:02. I'm going to get started. I know a few people are yet to join, and I just want to welcome you all to our youth engagement webinar here as part of our January Jumpstart. And I am, when we have a chance, I think we'll later, Sung, I'll let people come in and then we'll also be hearing from you, those of you who have fellows, and those of you who are fellows will want to hear from you. But I think we'll start with some of the content and do some of our introductions a little later, so that way we can get some more people to join us. So welcome. I'm the executive director for the League of Women Voters in Minnesota, and it is wonderful to be here. In addition to having, I think we have 18 fellows now. We also, let's see, I'm going to have her. I was going to say, in addition to 18 fellows, we are just onboarding 7 new interns, of which I see Maddie just connected. So we told our interns too, if they want to jump in and learn a little bit about what we're doing in some of these areas. So we're very excited to be engaging with high school youth, but also college youth coming forward here. So lots to learn from each other for sure. So I am going to share my screen and go through some slides, my very messy screen there. You don't need to see all of that. Close the closet on the screen. But we're going to walk through some things. And like I said, then we'll do some introductions actually a little bit later as we go. And just very excited to have you all here. And I wanted to start out, well, first of all, our January Jumpstarts generally. This is our first January Jumpstart for league leaders, and we're really excited about being able to help orient people to their roles. Maybe some of you have a role of doing youth engagement, but you haven't had a chance to do it yet. We also like to network among among the league leaders, and certainly want to answer any questions and get feedback from you. So those are all things we hope to do today. All right, I wanted to start out with some data, and this tells you kind of the story we're dealing with here. And all of these slides, by the way, will come to you as a participant. This will be available to everyone, so you don't need to furiously take notes if you don't want to. But because this is a great site, this youth data at Tufts. Tufts keeps amazing data on voting, but especially youth voting. And if you look at this for the state of Minnesota, you can put in your own state. We only had 44% voter turnout among young people in the 2018 election. Their information just goes back to 2018. 65% voter registration. So I know that in 2020 it went up some, but what we have been saying is that it really was closer to 60% turnout. So we really are interested in this area of how do we help youth get registered and then actually vote, because we can also see the gap, right, of voter registration between voter turnout. And so we know for all of us who are engaged in this work, part of it is finding out from the youth, what can we do? How can we all work together to get better on this? Some of the things we talk about at the national level too is certainly it's not that young people are not interested in the issues or not interested in voting. And this was a recent survey about what young people want to talk about when they're being engaged in elections. Big ones, racial justice and policing, of course, being a really important issue right now. Always was, but it's come up to the top as something we all are talking about. Pay equity, reproductive rights, college debt. Environmentalists, certainly climate change is a big issue, minimum wage and immigration. These tend to be some of the issues that young people are really talking about. And so, one of the things we kind of look at is, well, why should the league be involved in looking at engaging youth? You know, the League of Women Voters, we're women, and a lot of us are older women. What about these young people? Well, again, we have played a role throughout our organization in reaching young people. We know that a lot of community organizations especially a lot of them work on college age, but not so much high school age. And that's a place where we really get involved here. We find that youth really are also probably some of the most influential among themselves in getting others to vote. So for the league, it really matters for us to get more youth involved, because it's having youth talk to their friends that really helps in an exponential factor of getting youth involvement. Racial justice is certainly, with our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, racial justice really seems to be motivating and activating a lot of youth. So it's a great place because we are also participating in DEI initiatives. It's a great time to be able to connect with more diverse youth. And free and fair elections. A third of youth in our survey, including half of those who voted for President Trump, consider it at least somewhat likely that the US will no longer hold free and fair elections, which is very sad for us, because being able to have trust in the system is certainly a big part of people continuing to vote. So these are things, as we look to be engaged with youth, to think about what some of the data are saying. And so one of the things we want to do today is we're going to start out by talking about advocacy, because advocacy is really, a lot of our projects with our voter service interns or our youth fellows are doing a lot of the voter involvement and engagement. But what you see from the research is where a lot of the students are, or where young people are engaged, is more through the advocacy, that by again being involved and showing our commitment to and be involved, that really helps us get more youth to be excited about voting. And there's lots of ways that you can be involved in advocacy. When we think of advocacy, sometimes we think about just lobbying, or we think about protest. All of those are part of the same bucket. But we're going to talk a little bit about some of the difference. And then we're going to spend some time in this advocacy bucket, and then we'll, at the end of my chatting, and before we start to hear from you, we'll talk more about voting itself. But again, it's this understanding that being engaged in the issues is where we want to go. And I think what I like to think of too is when we were really studying the centennial, when in 1920, when women we were able to expand the right to vote for women. Really, it wasn't that women wanted the right to vote for the privilege, right? It's a great privilege to vote, but they wanted it because they wanted to make change in the government level. And so voting is not the end result. It's the first result to be able to be active on the issues you care about. And I think it's important to understand that distinction. Voting isn't just the destination, it's the means by which we are able to really have our voice be heard. It's the first step in the process. It's just the beginning. So if people really care about racial justice and climate change and student debt, all of that happens first by voting, because with that vote, you can make that change. So sometimes it's flipping it around, right? Kind of flipping it around that way. I wanted to point out a few resources we have, and one of them is, in anything we do, is we have this on our website, this pledge to vote. And this is something we really hope that whether you're a participant in the Fellows Program or not, will take advantage of. And right now, people can sign up to get text reminders. You can text youth vote or min vote today. You can try it out, the 33222. You go on your cell phone and you put youth vote in, or you put in 33222 and text youth vote, and you will be automatically signed up for the election reminders. We don't know who you are when we get it. We don't sell the list or do anything, because all we have are cell phone numbers, and you can unsubscribe at any time. But this has been a really great way, again, to engage people another way of engaging people to vote, which is to remind people just of when voting happens. And when you look down the list of some of our older engagements, Part of it was telling people about National Voter Registration Day, when early voting begins. There are a lot of complexities sometimes about elections, and this is a way where you get a nice text that was like, hey, check out your registration, here's your ballot. So this is a great sort of way, while it's about voting, it's a great way to be an advocate for voting. And that's what we're talking about today, is how do you advocate for these things? And telling friends and family, hey, go ahead and get signed up to at least learn about what some of the key dates are in elections. So another piece for us is we in the League of Women Voters have a wonderful public website, and we have under our local leagues, it's called Member Resources. And this is where all the things we do are linked and talked about, and resources are here. And I want to take some time to talk about our action and advocacy section, because it really starts out with next week. Like next week really starts our advocacy timeline, because it starts out with caucus. So those of you who perhaps, if you're new to thinking about elections and voting, we all want to vote because we want to vote for someone, right? We want to get involved in our elections. And the first place that advocacy really starts is getting involved in your local community through your caucuses. And these are partisan activities. So people will sometimes just say, well, I thought the League of Women Voters was nonpartisan. Well, we are. We do not endorse candidates. We do not endorse parties, but we definitely all participate as partisan people when we're voters, right? We make partisan decisions as voters, and that's how it works. People are partisan most of the time, unless it's a local nonpartisan race. So this document on our website talks about how to be effective in a caucus. It tells you how to find out where the caucuses are, how elections work. And then what we have is a series of resolutions. These resolutions were sort of crowdsourced by our league members. And what happens at a caucus is individual voters, you wouldn't say the League of Women Voters, but if I wanted to go to my caucus, I could bring forward one of these resolutions to ask it to be part of the party platform where I am. If I'm a Republican or a Democrat, or then I could say, and one of them is pre-registration for high school students. So this is like a really great first advocacy everyone can do on February 1st, whether you're a high school student or not, is to pull up and try to get this on on the platform of your party. Pre-registration for high school students, saying, whereas our democracy is stronger when all eligible voters exercise their right to vote. All the whereases, basically saying we want the party to support pre-registration of high school students ages 16 and 17. We know that it does seem silly that we have to go, right, and individually register everyone. We know everyone is eligible to vote when they are 18, but yet we still have to have everyone make that extra step. So this is a really great first advocacy piece, is to bring a resolution like this to your precinct caucus. Okay, and as I'm going along, if you have questions, certainly put them in the chat, because it's hard for me to see hands raised. But if you put them in the chat, I'll address questions as we go, and we'll have a Q&A at the end too. So, so precinct caucuses are wonderful. Another thing that is important are staying involved then when sessions start. So February 1st is precinct caucus. Also, what kicks off next week on the 31st, on Monday, is our legislative session. Our Minnesota legislative session will run next Monday through the sort of mid to end of May. And during that time, all kinds of bills will come up, right? And the legislature will figure out how to spend $8 billion of new money that they found lying around. And so we have about 34 people who are signed up to be part of our lobby and observer corps to watch bills, to watch. It's really nice right now because you can follow bills through committee hearings online because of the virtual nature of things. But one of the big ways to be advocates is to look for those action alerts that nonprofits put out. Action alerts are a very, very important thing that I think are underrated because we find we have 2,300 members, and what will happen is we'll send out an action alert. Let's see, that's LWVUS. LWVMN, we'll often send out an action alert, and we don't have any. Here's one of the last ones we did. Fight back against voter ID. Everything is set up for you. All you have to do is hit the button, take action. You put in your street address. I'm going to do that right here. And I already did it, so we'll see if it let me. And then it takes you right to your officials. So it's really nice. Action alerts are something we do with the League of Women Voters, but a lot of groups you care about might send you action alerts. And all I'd have to do here is put my name in and I click send, and that's it. You can also in most action alerts, you can edit them, you can change them up. But these matter to election officials when there's important things going, like look for those. But what you'll find when you look at this, again, I think of all these sort of little things. They're not little, but when you look at, for example, this last action alert, I'll go back here, open that again. On this last action alert, we had 154 people. So that's like only 5% of our membership responded. So that's an example, again, of how we can all be really great advocates, is look for those action alerts to come out and fill them out. It literally takes, 60 seconds to be a good advocate. And you'll see those from all kinds of organizations. So that is a really good one to think about. Another thing I wanted to show you under advocacy is staying nonpartisan. So this is a big area where people are really like, well, how do you stay nonpartisan in advocacy? So if you're advocating for the League of Women Voters, and you're advocating on an issue, sometimes people will say, well, we think the League leans to the left on this or to the right on this. And it's like, we take our positions, the League of Women Voters takes their positions by studying issues and voting on members for what our positions are. And under where we stand, you can see, if you click on our positions, you'll see all kinds of positions that we have on all kinds of issues. And so we can advocate on those issues. We can't affect what the partisan groups choose to do. So sometimes that's hard because right now, for example, it is really hard around election security. We know that the only party that's really been pushing the stop the steal or the big lie has been the Republican Party. And so when we talk about that, people will say, well, you're just being partisan. We're like, well, no, we're talking about the issue of free and fair elections. We can't help that it's sorted itself out that way. Another example would be on the other side. We participated in an advocacy we signed on to the Walls Climate Report Card. It was working with a variety of environmental groups to let Governor Walls know his grade on various climate change areas and where he could do better. And I got a lot of calls from people saying, well, why are you picking on Governor Walls? And, so it goes both ways. It's like, well, we don't choose to pick on people. We choose to advocate for issues, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, according to what our issues are. So this little guide, I think, is really helpful on, how do you stay nonpartisan? And one of it is like, so when you look at the do's right here on this page, do use language to encourage current elections to adopt a policy, right? Like gun safety now, safe schools, things like that. When you are, if you are doing work with LWVMN and you're out there doing work on advocacy, what you don't do is combine that with voter service. So an example would be, we participated in Students Demand Action. a couple of years ago after the Parkland shootings, or one of the shootings. It's terrible. There's so many, you forget which one. But we really, that's when we started our Pledge to Vote program, because the students from the podium said, hey, everyone pledge to vote by texting youth vote to 33222. So we were really advocating for gun control. At the same time, we were registering voters, but they were different people. The people who were advocating were not also registering voters. We were registering anyone there without asking them their party or their view on issues. So we try to separate those. So this is a really helpful page. It's like, do not combine voter service with advocacy. So for example, do not target the registration of voters who support a particular policy. So that's important. Do not share our positions alongside candidate information. So we wouldn't say, look at this candidate, they really believe like us. We just say, here are the candidates. When we're supporting candidate information, here are our issues, but we don't put them together. Do not attack elected officials, obviously. Do not suggest that people should vote for or against a candidate or a party. And I think, so these are the kinds of things that really can be helpful. I know it's often difficult. The other thing to think about with advocacy is really we only really have candidates once they've filed and the filing closes. So a lot of people are talking about running for office right now, right? But all of the offices and this is going to be a huge year because of redistricting. Everybody's going to be up. Everybody's up except for our 2 US senators. So, but those people will really only be filing, and those filings will only be kind of official in June. And so it's kind of nice. So you think during the legislative session, you have a little more leeway. I mean, again, you're not wanting to combine to endorse a party. I just think of it comes naturally to me. Like when I'm writing something, I'm like, am I endorsing a party or a candidate? I'm like, no. And the reverse is true. I mean, the other reverse is true when you think about, for example, January 6th, when we had the insurrection on January 6th, and we had 14 Minnesota legislators sign a letter. They wanted to be part of the Texas Attorney General lawsuit to stop the election results. And we called out those legislators, and they happened to all be Republican. And so people said, well, that's a partisan act. And we're like, no, again, we're calling on the issue. We, yes, vehemently are opposed to any legislature trying to undo the will of the people. The fact that they're Republicans doesn't mean we're gonna equally not call them out because they're Republicans. We don't call people out based on their party. So it goes both ways. So I hope that's providing some clarity to you. I mean, it's just a good filter to say, oh, hey, am I endorsing a party or a candidate? And when we're working on issues, it's like, nope, I'm promoting an issue. I can't help that one party or another has a preference for an issue, right? So those are the things to think about. And, it's especially tricky during voter service season from June forward. But by then, what's nice is session is over. So it gives you it's a little easier right now during session, because we really don't have any candidates. We have people thinking about running for office and talking about it, but filing doesn't officially, start until the summer. That's a lot of information so far. So I just want to stop and see if you want to digest that. Are there any questions that you want to put in the chat, or anything that's just like, I don't understand what you're talking about? So feel free. But I think these, again, are under this member resources, and it's really helpful. The other thing is the letters to the editor. So this is really, again, we talk about pledging to vote, attending your caucuses, but letters to the editor are fabulous. And I think that absolutely, for those students who are on the call, editors would love to get letters from you to hear from young people is really, really great. So I really, really support it. What I find there's a lot of ways. I mean, when you write your letter, so this little piece talks a little bit about an effective letter. And one of the things we're hoping for our fellows program is that every fellow would just try to write one letter. And it doesn't all have to be to the Pioneer Press or to the Star Tribune. It could be to your local, Sun Sailor, or, other group, other newspaper. It could also be to a blog. We do a lot of that. We write a lot of letters to the editor, but we put them on our league blog, and then we link to those on social media, and they kind of get picked up that way. So for young people using social media, sometimes you put your letter together, and you can put it on a blog and link from there. So this piece tells you a little bit about what are the effective ways to write a letter to the editor. And it really is following the rules that they have. It's being short, concise, using facts, all of this stuff. But this is a great resource for those of you who are mentoring youth, and for the youth here to really use this as a guide for writing an effective letter. And if you do write a letter and you get it published somewhere, let us know, because we get a lot of press in the league, and we put that out there in our press coverage. This is our press coverage section. We try to link to all kinds of great things that are going on out there, which happen all throughout the year. So let us know if you get published, and that is fun too. Okay, so lastly, I want to go back. Another thing people ask a lot about when partnering is this one. Hey, can we partner with this group or that group? This is a tough one, right? Because part of our being nonpartisan is we want to align ourselves with people who are not endorsing candidates or endorsing parties. But it's even trickier because a lot of people who are nonprofit like us, meaning they have their 501c3 status, might also have a 501c4, which allows them to endorse candidates or to work, or parties. So that makes it even more confusing as to know who and when do you partner. So you really want to think about it. I think about with Indivisible is a great example of an organization that grew up in that after 2016. And they do a lot of wonderful work, have a lot of good groups out in the local communities. We've partnered with Indivisible on many things, but especially voter registration. If we're out there on a nonpartisan basis doing voter registration with Indivisible groups, that is a great partnership. But we don't partner with Indivisible if they're out there supporting candidates, specific candidates. If they want to say, vote for these candidates, right? Or vote for this party. That's when you don't want to partner as a league member. And I say that, I want to also say it's this reminder. Sometimes people say, well, it's too restrictive to be a member of the league because I want to be partisan. We all are partisan. Remember, as voters, we all go into the voting booth and make a partisan decision. We encourage all of our members to go to caucus, meaning you have to declare what your party is. As an individual, for sure, you should participate in local politics and in local party politics, just not as a League of Women Voters member. As Michelle Witte, I can put on and go to my caucus or go to wherever, and that's who I am as an individual voter. But when I'm representing the League of Women Voters, I then am taking that greater lens. So that's a way to think about it. We're never asking people to abandon their passion, their parties, whatever you're going to do, and we want you to do what you do. Now, if you're a league leader and you're the head of voter service for your local league, and you're also somebody's campaign manager on a partisan race, then that's a bit of a problem, right? So people who are league leaders in voter service do have a little higher standard to uphold, and we work with folks on that. Sue's asking a great question. Can individuals invoke LWV and letters to editors without the board one voice? And I actually have a whole slide on that. So you're asking a great question, and I am going to answer that shortly. Okay, so this is another great resource about who to partner with, when to partner, how to partner, which hopefully is also helpful. All right. So I am going to go ahead just really quick to the one voice, and then we'll come back because seeing you asked it, that's a good question. Where are you? Come on, stay in place here. Sorry, am I little, there we go. Now it's working. So Sue's question was about speaking with one voice. And that is, imagine, so here we are, an organization, the League of Women Voters, right, is a national organization. We have state leagues in all 50 states. And there are over 750 local leagues in all of those 50 states. We have 35 local leagues in Minnesota. So we don't, how do we all speak with one voice? That's pretty tough. This is the way to think about it. LWVUS sets national and federal priorities and lobbies the president and Congress. So our U.S. congressional members, our 8 U.S. congressional members and our U.S. senators, when things are about that, so like the Freedom to Vote Act and the John F. Lewis Voting Act, we were talking about things that are at the national level, we let the National League do the advocacy on that. And that's always, people will say, well, won't you sign on to this? Now, an area that is often challenging for us is when it comes to our Boundary Waters area. The Boundary Waters is a federally protected area, but it's really in the state of Minnesota. And how do we advocate on things that have this? So LWVUS is very good at, we're like, hey, can we lobby on this? And they're very good about that and giving us that freedom. It's mostly about coordination. It's really not about control. It's about saying our best way to be effective is to have a strategy. And if LWVUS has a strategy, for example, working with Senator Klobuchar on the Voting Rights Act, but then we as local leagues or state league do something different, it can get confusing. So we're trying to speak with one voice, meaning we allow LWVUS to speak for us. The same thing is with LWVMN. For us, that's where I work, and where as the state to set state priorities, and we lobby and lobby the governor and the state legislature. And so local leagues do need to coordinate with us if they want to lobby for state legislation or action. So if, let's say, LWV Duluth wants to lobby on an important bill pertaining to all the great environmental regulation issues that are in front of us, they would need to work through us if it's a state bill at the legislature. And then they become part of our lobby and observer corps. And we now meet, like when the session starts, we have 34 members who have all signed up from all over the state to be involved in advocacy. And the difference would be, using the Duluth example, is that maybe there's an issue that is in the city of Duluth about city water quality, or instead of state water quality, local leagues can set their own priorities and advocate to local government. Excuse me. And so we work on the state, and then local leagues get to set those priorities and advocate on their own for their own local governments, county, city, town, school board, etc. So there's just sort of this federated view of that. And it is important, if people were to imagine we have a position on a bill and somebody were to write a letter as the League of Women Voters about a state bill, but we didn't know about it. It's just a kind of a courtesy in knowing about it, but it's also working in tandem so that we speak with one voice. So I hope that helps as well. Yeah, so Karen Langston's saying that you have a fairly complete policy covering who can do what. I could send this to us. Yeah, Karen, let's send me your who can do what. I love that. We could add that on member resources if you've got a good way of doing that. It would be great. And we can, yeah, and we'll include that in the follow-up, because we'll send you all the slides that you're seeing in any documents we refer to today. So, so where we are now is, what are our priorities? So LWV Minnesota, these are our three big priorities for legislation. It doesn't mean they're the only things we're advocating for, but obviously now we only have one staff person who's a true lobbyist, Nick Harper, our civic engagement manager. I also am a registered lobbyist. So we use a lot of people to lobby. But our three areas are democracy, climate change, and racial justice. And in democracy, I've sent you these links, and I'm just going to run through these really fast because we're getting, time is running. But we have a whole new area of voter security we're going to be talking about on this Elections 101. We just did a big thank you to local officials, but we're also going to start, this webpage will in February turn into a whole annotation of how voting works and why we know it's fair and accurate. We also have our climate change task force. We have climate change is certainly something that the League has recognized as really important for democracy. And so in here is our task force. We have all the task force members are listed here and where they're from, and we meet regularly. If you want to subscribe to that list, we meet on Zoom the first Wednesday of each month and have a ton of resources there. And we do the bill tracking through Minnesota Environmental Partnership. And I think this is another way for advocacy for us. This is a great way to be successful advocates without having to do it ourselves. We have a great partnership through the Minnesota Environmental Partnership that helps us be out there on this topic. And then racial justice. Certainly the biggest area has been around restoring the vote, or restoring the votes to those who have been convicted of a felony. Right now in the state of Minnesota, there are about 50,000 people who are living in the community who have served their sentence, but because they are still on probation or parole, they are not able to vote. We think that that is wrong and that should be restored. So we do a lot around restore the vote and other racial justice topics that are coming up. So, all right, here we go. Speak with one voice. A little bit about how we take action as well is the League really does a good job of studying. We really believe in studying the issues and taking action on them. And so leagues as a whole, I mean, I am really proud of the League tradition of basing all of our action and work on factual study and input from community, and then also having that stamp of approval from members. So this tells you a little bit, it's not like we're just like, well, I kind of feel this way, right? There's a pretty big process in place for how we know to take action on things. This is a little view of some of the leadership too, when you're, so when we talk about advocacy, writing letters to the editor, we've talked about precinct caucus resolutions, texting, the textedly service, there's lots of things, but knowing who the people are and finding a legislator that you might find in your community is really great to know who they are. But I really would love for all our youth fellows to get to know just one. It could be, it doesn't even have to be someone in your own area, but for sure, our local officials are looking for their constituents, right? But they would love to hear from students. And it's another way where student voice is really important. They're going to return that call if a student calls. So you've got a lot more power than you think you do. So anyway, just a little example on democracy as a whole that we've been working really hard on redistricting. That really was a big focus of ours during this last session. As you, some of you may know, there's likely not going to be a bill. It will be done through the courts, but we will have new maps as of February 14th. So that's another really pivotal date to remember, that there basically now we will have all new districts being redrawn. So there'll be a lot of need for people to learn about all the issues coming up. Another thing is voter empowerment. Obviously, we have a lot of voter suppression bills. They just, we just got a preview of some of those, and it's actually worse than I thought. Now, the thing about Minnesota to understand, however, is we are also the only state in the country with a divided legislature. So we have a DFL House and we have a Republican majority Senate, and then we have a DFL governor. What that has meant for the last 4 years is nothing good gets done and nothing bad gets done. I mean, generally, we have been in a stalemate. Very few things. We have sort of a least change environment now. We often don't advocate as vigorously as we might against certain things because certain things we know aren't going to happen because we have the controls of a group of legislators that care about votes the way we do. But we also find it hard to really advocate. And an example would be restore the vote. We know it's just not going to get passed. So how much time do you spend on issues that you just think you can't get done? So this year, because it's a bonding year and a budget year, most things will fall into that category, but there'll be a lot of discussion then when all the districts are redrawn about how next session will work. So before we talk about the fellows program, a little bit about it, even if you're not involved, I'd love for you to stay on the call because we're going to talk about things that affect all of our work. Are there any more questions on advocacy in general, kind of what we're doing, how to be involved, any questions you've had about all of that? The other thing, and just put the questions in chat as they come up. We will be issuing what we call our capital letter. That is also something, again, if you remember nothing else from today, if you're like, I wonder if the league has this or that, just go to our website and remember resources, because if we print it or post it somewhere, it is on here. I mean, as you can see, I'm scrolling very fast, but that's because there's a lot on here. Every newsletter for the last 2 years is on here, but we also have our capital letters to show you in the advocacy section. And we try to put those out at least once a month, where we really do this was an end of session one, where we talk about the bills. Let's see, this one isn't as detailed, about what's going on. We do have more interns this year, so I'm excited about us being able to give more information. This our capital letter, so if you see that come through in your email, it's great to read it. Quick things like what's going on, what are these bills? It's really interesting to see how sausage is made sometimes, as we say. Okay. Yeah. So Terry is asking, so we're going to talk a little bit about just the fellows program at all. So to fulfill the advocacy letter writing portion of youth engagement, what are the options? Basically, we would love to see students just write any letter. And the thing I really want to say about the fellows program is, we have 9 leagues who are participating in the program. We have 18 fellows. We're thrilled. But everybody's kind of come in at different times. So it's been a little hard to kind of pull you all together. We now, I think, everybody has their fellows on board and they've received their stipends. Some of you are just giving me the waivers and names. So we still have some stipends to give out. Local leagues can still claim up to $250 for use in your program. And we also will be, we have a whole, again, wonderful website here for our youth civic engagement that we will be updating now. And we want to get, these are our 2020 fellows. We want to get our 2022 fellows on there. So we will get all our names up by early February. So we'd love to, and then this is a great area on this page. We showcase the projects that were done last year. And the point I really want to make is we really are not concerned so much about you doing any one thing. We just want you to do a thing. Every local community has, and students have particular needs or interests. And that's really what we're looking for. This was really fun to look at, where some of the youth fellows last year organized a Zoom conversation with Secretary Simon. Others did things in their local schools with their youth voter newsletter. Some did signs. It's really fun to see the diversity of projects that students did. So these are just examples of things that that you can do any of those things. And when it comes to the newsletter or to the letter to the editor, any sort of letter to the media using that template is great, would be a great thing for them to do on an issue, again, that is something you at the league are working on. One of the reasons we like to have you as students really align with the league members is because our league members, you know, it's not so much about age, but we've been around a while. But we have some experiences, and it's nice to be able to have some mentors, I know, as a young person. And so using your coordinators to help you look at what are the issues you care about and the issues that the league is working on in your community. Because part of really being a community builder is being attached in your community. And one of the things we see with young people is less people are joining groups, but it really is groups, these organizations that work together for change. And so learning how to be part of a group, how to work together, how to collaborate is really important. Okay, the template for the letter, again, you guys were asking about that. We have, I'm just going to go back. If you go to under member resources and you go to advocacy, you'll see this right here, effective letters to the editor. So it's not a particular template because you're going to have your own issue, but it tells you how to write an effective one, sort of what the format is. You have an introduction, you have some content, and you have the call to action. And then we give a variety of tips about how to write a good letter to the editor here. You also, another good thing to do is just to look at good letters to the editor that have been written. And for us on our website, again, I know I'm always talking about our website, but on our Minnesota Voter blog, this is where we put all of our press releases and our letters to the editor, and things are all here. So you can also kind of look at some of the things we've taken a stand on or written about. And that can help you sometimes to define how you would want your letter to go. So again, my hope is simply for fellows to really just define and achieve a project. You want to register or engage youth voters, and we would like you to be involved in some level of advocacy through a letter writing. Maybe you just do not want to write a letter, but you really want to get involved in caucus, or you really want to lobby on a certain issue. That is all great too. And that's why we really want to go instead to just submit a little update for me on what you're doing. We don't want people to get too overly concerned about, well, we've got to do all these specific things. What we've found is some people really like the direction of the original paperwork that we have for the fellows program, where we're telling you, try to do these certain amount of things, which is great. But we pretty much have half of the group that always asks to do something different. And I'm like, that's great, right? The whole idea is to just get started. And we paid the students the full stipend now, largely because people were coming on and off at such different times. And we just decided to go ahead and show our commitment to you as students to be involved. And we trust they'll stick around and help us out throughout this. So we will have some official additional trainings. The Office of the Secretary of State has a wonderful new voter engagement director, Simone Frierson. We will be doing, everyone will get a chance to meet Secretary Simon. That's been a signature piece of our program that will happen. So we'll have some more trainings coming up. So that is, let's see here. I'm just looking at your messages. Okay. So any questions? And I'd love to hear. Now I'm gonna, let's see here. I'm gonna make sure, I think I'm done. Not gonna worry about that. Oh, I'm gonna tell you one more thing, then I'll stop sharing so we can see each other. The other opportunity that will be coming around is to be part of our Voting Violet team. So Voting Violet, our league llama, we're actually creating a real mascot that can go to area fairs and parades and help us spread the word about our Vote 411. So we will be looking for students and paying students this summer to be part of that. So stay tuned for that as well. That's exciting. All right. So that is a lot of information, but Hopefully I'm touching on some key things, and I can see you now. So if you want to just raise a hand, either using your hand raise button or personally, I can call on you if you have any other questions about advocacy, about the program, anything. One other thing I will say, and again, because of sort of where the Secretary of State's office has been too, we with this new partnership we have with Simone Frierson in her office, we really are relooking at the wonderful. I see Meg Walters is on, and she and Becky Munson did an amazing job last year of helping us get started on a big full list of all the high schools, public, private, and charter, which leagues are involved in which high schools, and we did a really big outreach to schools during COVID. We are going to take that list and keep moving it forward. We're going to be working with Youth and Government, the mock election, and Kids Vote to be able to, and the Secretary of State's office, so that we can really reach out to more schools who don't have League of Women Voters or wonderful civic engagement and fellows to help them out. So that'll be a couple of other opportunities that we might share with you all as coordinators to say, hey, if you've got some fellows willing to do some additional projects, we'll have some projects for you. Should we be directing, I'm just reading here some of your questions now. Should we be directing students to vote 411 or this is a great question, or the SOS website, minvotes.org? You know, Vote 411 right now will really come to life when in June, when we have candidate information in there. It still is alive now, it's all there. And if you go to vote411.org and you want to register to vote from there, absolutely. What it just does is take you to minvotes.org. The reason we often don't just use minvotes.org is because it doesn't have that full candidate information. Whereas Vote 411 really is, when the candidates are running, it is a link back to, you can get all the things you can do in the Secretary of State's office are also embedded in there, as well as all the candidate information is in there, as well as anything else we want to put in there. And this year we're excited to also educate people about, people want to learn more about how their ballot travels in the state of Minnesota and why we know it's fair and accurate. So Vote 411 really will be a much more comprehensive tool once the election season starts. So I think right now we generally, like when we do the naturalization ceremonies, there's also kind of context, right? So like at our naturalization ceremonies where we're registering new citizens, we always talk about minvotes.org and the government, but sometimes, because we don't want to overplay our hand there. So you also kind of consider your sources, right? Okay, so Cindy's asking, in St. Peter area, if you're just getting started in youth engagement, when do you recommend starting recruiting? It's really ideal if you can get students in the spring who want to come back in the fall. It's really great because and it's been hard for us to find the rhythm of this, but because if you what is nice is you have National Voter Registration Day in September, and that is really a great opportunity to reach out to some of the some of the schools and really do some really cool things. But a lot of people find that they really want to recruit in the fall and then start like now. I think the best time is the time that works for you and your community and your group, and so we try to create sort of a revolving program here where we have some of these minimal funds, are not a lot, but we know that $250 can mean something to students to help them participate. And we know that a little bit of money for local leagues for supplies can help. So if you're interested, even though there'll be like formal application times, just connect with me. We're willing to help you at any point in the process. And Mary's saying social policy, you in your area, work with St. Olaf. Yeah, oh my gosh, you all do a lot there. Letter writing projects that you're doing together. Letter writing, postcarding, all of those are great projects to do with students. So, and yeah, Jackie, the 250 for the league is a reimbursement basis. We just did it last year, but we actually had a lot of people return the money because they never needed it. So basically, we're happy to help you if you have some specific needs. Just let me know, and we're happy to reimburse you up to $250 for any of that. So that's a lot. Woo. Any other questions? There will be more information now that we're pretty much have our group all together. We're going to kind of finalize some of these additional webinars and trainings. In short, all of you locally can develop and do your own program. Just sort of let me know what you're doing. That's really all we ask. And to add a little more formality, I might just email you all once a month to say, hey, ship me a report. It's just, I'm amazed at how much it is, how unique all the programs are in each area, because some people have really great school relationships and they've been running voter registrations, and you can just build on those. But what's happened in a lot of schools is when they have their civic engagement fellow with them, they registered 4 times the amount of students, right? Because when we go in and put up go to the lunchroom and stand there as us older ladies, students are like, but if their students are going around table to table, or it becomes part of a National Honor Society project or something like that, they can really make the difference. So it doesn't even have to be something completely new. Maybe you've been running a voter registration in several high schools or a high school forever. You can probably make it a lot stronger, as well as build on it, getting those students to pledge to vote, not just registering, but pledging to vote, getting those election reminders as a way to build and grow that response rate. All right, so I hope this helps. You all know where to find me. I've seen most all of your emails in my inbox, and my inbox gets really full sometimes, so I apologize when I'm not right on it, but you all have permission to keep poking me until I get back to you. So,
Michelle, could I just do a quick wrap up? This is Meg.
Yeah, go ahead, Meg.
I'm just taking notes here for Sheila because she couldn't join the call, so I just want to make sure I'm giving her the most important points. So do you want us to do a once a month update to you?
I think that would be great, Meg. I think and I mean by update a paragraph. Hey, this month, it's really when something happens. What I don't want is for people to just be like, oh, I didn't know what to do, so I didn't do anything. So that's why we're sort of saying if once a month, it could be, hey, we know a new activity this month, but if you could just throw it on your calendar and kick me an email, that would be great. That way I know too, you're not hurting out there.
Super. The second thing is that you do want everybody to write an advocacy letter. And so Sheila may already know that, but I'll make sure to
read that's what we have in the materials, like a letter to the editor. But it also, like I said, could be, I'm going to advocate on this issue or that issue another way, if they have another way. But I think the letter is a good one, because I think as students, it's good to learn how to write effectively persuasive material like that. 100%. So it's a great thing.
Yeah, I agree. And then the third thing, or 2 more points actually. So February 14th is when the redistricting comes out. So that's when we will have an idea of our lines of.
Yeah, so February, it's actually, I should say 15th. 15th is when probably the courts will issue the final maps, or do February 15th. And then you'll see how everything is changed up, what is changed up in terms of districts. And it'll be interesting. People often it's weird that you have the caucus before before the boundaries. So what happens with caucus and delegates is it just all kind of uses the old boundaries until, which is weird, but that's how it has worked.
Okay, and really quickly, and I should probably know this too, do you know when candidates have to submit? What's the last date they can submit if they're running or not for November?
I can't remember the exact date, but it's in June. So the first round, now this isn't local candidates, although I think because of redistricting, I don't think we have any April races, but for all the state legislative races and congressional officials and the constitutional officers, it is sometime mid-June.
Okay.
And I should know that myself by now, but I don't, but it's sometime in June when the filings close.
Okay, really
Because there
sorry.
would be the possibility for primaries in August. So there's, those 2 elections that might happen.
So awesome. Hey, sorry. And when are
Yeah.
the what are the caucuses again?
February 1st. So you have to kind of look to each party and see what they are and where they are in your precinct and area. A great thing if you all have students to bring them with you. If you go to your caucus, it's a great thing to bring your student with you just to observe it. And they go, what the heck is that? It's kind of crazy, right? But
Would be
yeah.
really interesting. Sorry. And then just the last point is, so if they're doing things like, flyers for voter registration day and things like that, and we say just do the mnvotes.org website until.
Absolutely. I would just use that right now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Super. Thank you. That's
Good questions. Way to go. And one step, we build it one brick at a time, don't we?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you everybody so much for taking the time and for your leadership and support. All right. And Shani, thanks as a student for being part of the mix here. All right. Take care, everybody.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.